whenever an obscure character, an off-meta character, maybe a low-tier character wins an event, people start to have some debates about tier lists, about matchups. And, you know, Fang, this is the first major event Fang has won since maybe 2016, you could argue, when the game was first out. Cien won, I believe, like a Russian CPT event way back in the day, back when Cien used to play Fang. But since then, Fang has been kind of like that top 8 finisher that kind of wrenched in the bracket, but never really sealing the deal on a major event. But now he did. And people are saying, oh, is Fang low tier? But I'm here to say, does it matter?
I feel like when it comes to judging Fang, like, yes, Karen, we just talked about, has 4 players in Capcom Cup. There's 4 Karen players in Capcom Cup. So, you know, that's 4 versus 0. So we know in general that Karen, not just off of that, but we know Karen is higher on the tier list, is widely accepted, than someone like Fang is. But there's a difference between tiers and matchups. And when it comes down to it, like that matchup there, for example, some people will say that Karen loses. I disagree. I think it's a 5-5 matchup. I think that's a matchup I got like the most experience in versus other Karens. But, you know, regardless of whatever your opinion may be, like, it's not like he loses that matchup regardless. He doesn't lose it. So because of that, it doesn't matter where he's at on the tier list. Problem X, we've recently seen using Alex going up against Karen, for example. And, you know, Karen, again, higher on the tier list than Alex, but I think that's a rough matchup for Karen this season. So I really think that when we have these debates or we just have these general talks or whatever in the FGC, that part is always swept under the rug to me, Brian, and I don't know why.
It's when you use like that terminology, like you talk about tiers, the problem with that is it immediately eliminates nuance. Because like you just mentioned, if you're in a tournament, you just need to win the matches in front of you. If you lose to literally every other character, like the character you main loses to everybody else, but you're playing a favorable matchup, it doesn't matter that you lose to the rest of the cast at all. You're trying to win that matchup. And I think people kind of lose sight of that characters are tools. They're a means to an end, really. And that's why I like the Problem X example, because I feel like he kind of embodies that mentality the best out of like most top players in Street Fighter V. He is always searching for the path of least resistance, for the favorable matchup, for whatever problem's being presented to him, right? Problem X, he's crunching the numbers. So it's also funny that we're using kind of Punk as the bar for this. If you can beat Punk, then you must be onto something. Right?
Yeah, right. It just so happens that that's the recent. Yeah, it just so happens.
If you can beat Punk, you must be doing something right. So Punk, that just speaks.
He's
to his
another
skill.
example of that. Actually, Punk himself, man. Like sometimes you'll see Punk using like Vega. Of course, in CEO, that's different. Where you know
he was
picking
on us,
just picking it for fun. Just being disrespectful and making us feel trash at the game. But even at Street Fighter League Grand Finals, though. He used Vega in a serious match for a lot of money, going up against Big Bird's Ken. He clearly must just have thought that that's just a good match.
Yeah, path of least resistance. Vega's obviously a lower tier character compared to Karen, right? Like most characters are. But, you know, sometimes you just figure out what tool is best for both the play style of the opponent you're going against, the human element of it, and also the character matchup. So when people talk about Fang low tier, Fang can never win, Fang just has to win whatever matches are in the bracket. So if we go through the bracket, I was actually kind of asking around what are the bad matchups for Fang. And Mono's path to victory included Blarlad Abigail, Smug G, Nephew Colleen, Joe Umerogan Akuma, and then Punk with the Vega, Cammy, and Karen. So a lot of the bad matchups included, well, some people argue that Colleen was kind of bad, but a lot of these are not necessarily Vega's bad or Fang's bad matchups, except for Cammy. Cammy's the one who is like definitely the bad matchup is what people were agreeing on.
Which I think was only one game against the Cammy. It was only one
game against Punk's Cammy, but he, you know, like we mentioned before, how well is Punk gonna know Cammy Fang versus Mono's gonna know Fang Cammy, right?
Yeah.
So that said, you don't have to beat every person in the tournament to win. You don't have to beat all of them. You just have to beat the matches in front of you. So people really lose sight of that, and I really feel like we got to get better at talking about matchups.
Like a Geef can win. A Geef can win technically. But if you run into a Dawson, you might have beat the next 5 people. But you ran into a Dawson, it's over with for you.
Right. High tier characters have higher odds of running into good matchups. So over time, higher tier characters, if you solo main a higher tier character, you're more likely to win more often than a low tier main. But
and sometimes even if you lose less matchups, even if you don't lose like tons of matches, like I don't know Fang's whole matchup spread, but hypothetically you lose to Cammy. Well, if Cammy is just very popular, maybe you only lose to that character.
Right.
But Cammy's just so popular that this season, okay, no, your character is gonna suck because you're gonna have to play Cammy.
Exactly. The meta, like if your bad matchups are off meta picks or like other low tier characters which aren't as common, you're probably in a better spot even if you have a ton of losing matchups. I think Balrog's like that, right? Balrog's bad matchup would be like Fang. I kind of don't like the Fang matchup, but there's not many, you know,
and to worry about. Yeah,
there's not many to worry about.
And so if he does pop up, you're just gonna do accidental DP.
Yeah, just accidental DP, right? Also Laura too. I don't like the Laura matchup. There's only one I got to worry about, so that's kind of
true.
yeah, maybe, yeah. As long as I run into him in grand finals, maybe I'll be okay. But yeah, so if your matchups that are bad are not in the meta, who cares? If you don't run into them, who cares? And I think we're just starting to see the maturity a little bit in the Street Fighter V scene, because I feel like for too long, and I'm kind of I'm preaching right now, but I'm not really practicing what I'm preaching. I feel like we should be counterpicking more than we do.
Oh yes,
that makes a lot more sense. Like Problem X is the guy I respect the most. I don't think it's easy to counterpick, but I think if you're really a professional at this craft, it makes sense. And I love seeing Problem X using Alex for specific matchups because no one or Honda. His Honda's a problem. I'm telling. Yeah. I played his Honda in some casuals. Annoying. But you know, he figures out what's going to work for the player in the matchup, and too many people focus on that low tier stigma. And also in Street Fighter V, every character can win. Like,
everybody's viable.
Even in the bad matchups, they're not like just so much worse than the top tier character that you can't even play.